Welcome to the Godot BootCamp lesson on attaching an email identity. Let's discuss why you'd want to attach an email identity to a user's profile, as it may not apply to every gamer app. If your gamer app is going to allow users to authenticate anonymously, then this lesson is for you. As we've established in a previous bootcamp lesson, an anonymous identity can initially be a good thing for the end user, as they are not initially bothered by a login screen on their first playthrough. However, if the user logs out or loses their device, the anonymous profile is not recoverable. Presenting an anonymous user with the benefits of an authenticated identity and an option to attach one or more authenticated identities to their account would allow them to recover their profile in the event they logged out or lost their device. In this lesson, we're going to simply attach an email identity, but as you can see on the left, there are several different types of authenticated identities that brainCloud supports. This lesson is going to use a pair of brainCloud identity requests. The first request is called attach email identity. This request takes in two parameters, an email and a password. Click the JSON response to familiarize yourself with the data that the request will return. The second request is called get identities. This request does not take in any parameters, but it's important to note that this request only returns the authenticated identities. Click the JSON response to familiarize yourself with the data that the request will return. We're done in the API reference. Let's head into Godot. Run the game. Most likely, we reconnected with the previously authenticated email identity from the previous lesson. From the main menu, click brainCloud, then click Logout. Click Login. This is the standard email login for the example game, but we're going to change this dialog so that you can also log in via an anonymous identity. Luckily, this dialog we speak of has already been created in Godot. We just need to set up the code so that we can use it. Stop the game and then open Visual Studio Code and navigate to the dialogmanager.cs file. In the ready method, comment out the line that instantiates the email login dialog and uncomment the line below it. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiled successfully, open the Godot editor. Run the game. Notice the login dialog now displays an additional button called Anonymous. We still need to hook up some code to make sure that button works. Return to Visual Studio Code and let's continue with this lesson. Navigate to the networkmanager.cs file. Declare 4 public callback delegates, 2 to handle the response for the get identities request and 2 to handle the response for the attach email identity request. Declare a private member variable called identity types list that holds a list of strings. Declare a public property to expose the identity types list. Scroll down to the bottom. Above the output log method, declare a private method called parseIdentities. In the body, clear the identity types list. Then loop through all the elements in the dictionary parameter and add the key to the identity types list. Scroll up and find the handle authentication success method. Declare a public method called getIdentities. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, format an error message and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. If the user is authenticated, declare success callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, log the response data. Then deserialize the JSON response data into a dictionary called response. From the response dictionary, parse the data dictionary. From the data dictionary, parse the identities dictionary. Invoke the parseIdentities method, pass in a reference to the identities dictionary as the argument. If the success callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Next, declare a failure callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, format an error message, and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Invoke brainCloud's identity services get identities request, passing in the success and failure callback lambdas as the arguments. Next, declare a public method called attach email identity. In the body, check to see if the user is authenticated. If the user is not authenticated, format an error message and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. If the user is authenticated, declare success callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, log the response data. Then check the identity types list to see if it does not contain an email identity. If it doesn't, then we'll add it to the list. If the success callback delegate is not null, it will be invoked. Next, declare failure callback lambda. In the body of the lambda, format an error message, and then invoke the handle request error method, passing in the error message and the error delegate as the arguments. Invoke brainCloud's identity services attach email identity request, passing in the email and password parameters and the success and failure callback lambdas as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the email login dialog.cs file. In the onAnonymous button click method, delete the to-do comment. In its place, hide the dialog, show the connecting dialog, and invoke network's authenticate anonymous method, passing in the completed and failure callback delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the attach email dialog.cs file. Declare a pair of private network attach email identity delegates. Declare a public method called set. This method takes in the network's attach email identity delegates as the parameters. In the body, set the attach email identity delegate member variables. In the onAttach button click method, below the statement that hides the dialog, declare a statement that shows the connecting dialog. And then invoke the network's attach email identity method, passing in the email and password text field values and the attach email identity delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the dialogmanager.cs file. Scroll down and find the show attach email dialog method. Add a pair of parameters so that the method takes in the network's attach email identity delegates. Then in the body, invoke the attach email dialog set method, passing in the attach email identity delegates as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the brainCloud dialog.cs file. Declare a private method called onAttachEmailCompleted. In the body, hide the connecting dialog and then invoke the refresh method. Declare a private method called onAttachEmailFailed. In the body, hide the connecting dialog. In the refresh method for the attach email button, we're going to change the active state to depend on whether the user's account already has an email identity attached to it or not. If the user's account already has an email attached to it, then the button will not be visible to the user. Scroll up and find the onAttachEmailClicked method. In the body of the method, delete the to-do statement. In its place, invoke the dialog manager's showAttachEmail dialog method, passing in the onAttachEmailCompleted and onAttachEmailFailed methods as the arguments. Save the file and then navigate to the game.cs file. Scroll down and find the onAuthenticationRequestCompleted method. Invoke the network's getIdentities method. Save the file and then compile the code. If the code compiles successfully, open Godot. Run the game. When the login dialog appears, click Anonymous. We've now authenticated with an anonymous identity. Open your web browser and navigate to the brainCloud design portal. From the dashboard at the top next to App, click User. Click the top user in the list. Then on the right, click Go to User. This is the profile for the user that we just logged in with. Notice that it only has an anonymous identity attached to it. Navigate back into the running Godot application. From the main menu, click brainCloud, then click Attach Email. Enter a new email address and then a password. Click Attach. The email identity is now attached to the user's profile. We'll prove it by logging out and then logging in with the email identity. Click Logout, then click Login. Enter the credentials we just entered a moment ago. Click Login. We've now re-authenticated with brainCloud using our newly attached email identity. We can confirm this in the brainCloud portal. Click the user browser and then click the first user again. On the right, click Go to User. Notice that this profile now has an email identity attached to it. That means that this user can authenticate using the email credentials that we attached to the user's profile a moment ago. An overview of external authentication is the next lesson in the Godot BootCamp.